In the history of cinema, there are many scenes that most people consider to be perfect. But what actually defines a perfect scene? The scenario, the acting, the dialogue, or the music? I believe that a perfect scene is a combination of all of this at the same time. First of all, the performance must be perfect, transmitting all the feelings necessary for that specific moment. Second of all, the photography must be impeccable. Light and shadows must act in unity to guarantee the visual pleasure that the scene deserves. Third of all, the setting has to be not just beautiful, but epic. There must be a tone, a kind of magic that makes that moment an event. Fourth of all, the music must fit in all aspects. The background track is not the main focus in a film, but it can be in a specific scene, something that makes it different from everything else you've seen so far. Finally, all these elements must be together. None can be left aside as if they were not important. It's like a painter painting a picture. Each brush stroke must be filled with passion. Every second of a scene must be inspired and charged with passion. Anyway, I could talk about several perfect scenes, but I choose one that is not much talked about, and sometimes it's even forgotten. The Glenn Miller Story is a 1954 film directed by Anthony Mann and features James Stewart and June Allyson in the lead roles. The film tells the life of the American musician Glenn Miller, one of the biggest names in American music of all time. Between 1939 and 1942, Glenn Miller was one of the most successful musicians in the world. Here's an interesting fact. In just 4 years, Glenn Miller scored 16 number 1 records and 69 top 10 hits, more than Elvis Presley and the Beatles did in their entire careers. Returning to the film. During this story, Glenn Miller insists a few times that he wouldn't like to work with a big band, mainly because he believes he has a particular vision about how music works. At one point in the film, Glenn tells his wife, Helen, about his views on music.
It's hard to explain, but a band ought to have a sound all of its own, ought to have a personality.
Sort of like a person.
Uh-huh.
Well, how do you get this different sound?
Well, you see, the arrangements, the way you score each one of the individual instruments. Because some bands have that sound already, like Pollock, but it's not the right sound. Not for me.
What is?
I don't know. Haven't found it yet, but someday I'm going to find it. And when I do...
You'll find it. I'm sure you will.
You are?
After that, Glenn Miller has to learn how to live with a band and work with its members. Glenn looks disappointed and upset, with no perspective on how to make this all work. After many difficulties, Glenn has a moment of surprise and seems to have finally found a way to unite his musical vision with the instruments and people at his disposal. That's when we get the scene.
He's got it, maybe. Listen to those kids.
But there's no maybe about it, Mr. Shipman. That's it. That's the sound.
Let's start with the lights. In the scene of the composition of Moonlight Serenade, Glenn Miller's greatest success, it is possible to see a room with lighting at specific points, keeping the background a little darker. The first spotlight is next to Glenn Miller, due to the lamp on the table, and the other is on the piano. The light distribution is perfect, showing that Glenn and the piano are the protagonists of the scene and act together. Furthermore, the table lamp is not on the top of the musician, but next to him. Added to the light on the piano, Glenn Miller is exactly in the center of 2 points of light, proving to be the link between the composition on paper and its execution on the piano. The scene has a poetic progression simple due to the movement of the camera. The scene begins with full focus on the musical notes that Glenn is composing. The camera slowly moves away from Glenn's hands, enlarging the scene and showing how focused he was on the composition. James Stewart's face denotes all the effort that was being put in there. The camera moves away again and shows us the piano, right next to the musician. Soon after, he plays it. There are no words, but we perfectly understand the meaning of the scene. An idea is born small, but if nurtured, it grows and expands as far as its host allows it. The scene works in the same way. Then we have a masterful scene transition, where we are transported to the music room, where the shadow of Glenn composing the music is placed on the clarinet's bell. Once again, the scene uses the same effect, starting its focus on a clarinet as the camera zooms out, revealing the entire orchestra in unison, exactly how Glenn Miller said he wanted it to work. Glenn is shown alternating his view between the musicians and the horizon, demonstrating that he finally sees the future in front of him. The scene continues with the band performing. The central focus is on Glenn Miller, but the entire background is filled with people who applaud the band. The scene has shades of gold and white that convey peace and symbolize that Glenn has achieved his goal. It's not easy to talk about the acting in this film. James Stewart delivered one of the best roles of his career. The perplexity with which he demonstrates composing Moonlight Serenade is impressive. Afterwards, the way he reflects while the song is played, altogether with a shy smile, shows the humility of someone who has finally achieved his dream. June Allyson is also fantastic. She gives a gracious smile while slowly realizes that her husband has finally achieved his dream, the music. In the dance part, he winks at his wife, leaving the field of shyness and adopting an attitude of self-confidence. James Stewart still graces the scene with a look of surprise as he is applauded, finally realizing that he has achieved success. Let's talk about the music. Moonlight Serenade is the scene soundtrack. Glenn Miller's most famous song begins subtly, with more emphasis on low notes and slow beat. Little by little, the song increases and adapts to the scene. Again, the same idea used in the camera game. Start small and grow throughout the scene. There are some small echoes in the song as it grows, giving the sense that it is coming from far away, as if it was leaving the field of ideas and coming into reality. Furthermore, the music, as it was being composed, seems to take shapes as the scene passes, becoming more complete, louder, more solid. Finally, the dialogue. The entire scene has almost no conversation, but one sentence really stands out. Glenn's wife, Helen, played wonderfully by June Allyson, says the line.
He looks like he's got it, maybe. Listen to those kids.
But there's no maybe about it, Mr. Shipman. That's it. That's the sound.
That line is perfect. Helen sums up everything the scene means in just one sentence. Although I only focus it on one scene, it is important to say that the Glenn Miller's story is an incredible film, and I recommend that everyone watch it. The composition scene of Moonlight Serenade is perfect and gets even better when accompanied by the rest of the film.